A poor single father was doing a day job at a millionaire's house when he noticed something that stopped him cold. 3 babies, barefoot and crying, pushing against a locked door with their tiny hands. He went inside to check and found the nanny trapped in her own room, no phone, no way out, locked in by the man's own girlfriend. He found the key, opened the door, and stayed right there protecting those children until the millionaire himself walked to the front door and saw everything with his own eyes. What happened next changed the lives of everyone in that house forever. The millionaire heard the truth from a man who had nothing to gain and everything to lose by speaking it. And the woman who thought she had won discovered that some doors, once closed, never open again. Now, let's sit down and hear the full story of what really happened inside that house on that day. The rain was falling heavy over the streets of East Los Angeles that Monday morning. Daniel Reyes, 42 years old, pulled his old truck into the driveway of a beautiful house on Maple Creek Drive. He had gotten a call the night before from a neighbor who needed yard work done. One day of work, $50. For Daniel, that was enough to buy groceries for 3 days. Daniel was not a man who complained. He had worked construction, cleaned pools, painted fences, done whatever he could find since his wife passed away 6 years ago. He raised his daughter Camila, 16 years old, alone, and he never missed paying rent. Not once. He was the kind of man who showed up on time, worked hard, and went home without causing trouble. He grabbed his tools from the back of the truck. Rake, clippers, a worn pair of gloves that had seen better days. The house was large, a 2-story home with a perfectly trimmed lawn that somebody clearly paid a lot of money to maintain. There were flowers along the front path and a fountain near the gate that made soft sounds in the morning air. Daniel did not know who lived there. The neighbor, an older woman named Mrs. Torres, had given him the address and told him to go early. She said the family had triplets and that mornings were busy inside. She told him to stay in the backyard and not bother anyone. Daniel simply nodded and got to work. He was not there to make friends. He was there to earn an honest day. The backyard was even bigger than the front. A wide green lawn stretched from the back door all the way to a tall wooden fence. There were rose bushes along the sides, a small vegetable garden in the corner that needed serious attention, and a stone pathway that led to a little fountain nobody had cleaned in weeks. Daniel started with the pathway. He got on his knees and pulled the weeds between the stones one by one. It was slow work, but he did not mind. Slow work was still work. He could hear sound from inside the house, a television playing cartoons, high voices that he recognized as very small children, and then a woman's voice, sharp and quick, giving orders to someone else. He did not look up. He kept his eyes on the ground and his hands busy. Around 9 in the morning, the back door opened and a young woman came out carrying a basket of laundry. She stopped when she saw him. She was maybe 28 years old, with dark hair pulled back and tired eyes that told a story of someone who did not sleep enough. She was wearing simple clothes, a plain shirt, jeans, sneakers that were starting to fall apart. She nodded at him. He nodded back. She hung the laundry on the line without saying anything. But before she went back inside, she paused at the door and said quietly, "There's water in an orange cooler by the fence if you need it." Daniel looked up and said, "Thank you." She went back inside. He watched the door close and then looked back down at the stones. Something about her eyes stayed with him. Her name was Marina Castillo, 29 years old, and she had been a nanny for the 3 children in that house for almost 1 year. The triplets, 2 boys and a girl, were named Mateo, Diego, and Sofia. They were 1 year and 8 months old, full of energy, full of noise, and full of love that they gave without thinking. Marina had come to this job with nothing but a reference from a woman at her old church and the need to start over. She had lost a baby 18 months before, at 26 weeks of pregnancy. She had lost her partner 2 weeks after that. She had lost her apartment a month later. When Roberto Navarro called her after seeing her name posted on a neighborhood board, she almost said no, but she said yes. And that yes changed her life. Roberto was 41 years old. He had made his money in real estate investment and development. He owned 4 buildings in the Los Angeles area and worked with companies across California. He was serious, quiet, and had eyes that looked like they had seen too much grief in too little time. His wife, Elena, had passed away 3 days after the triplets were born, a complication that the doctors called rare, and that Roberto still could not talk about without his voice going flat and empty. He hired 3 nannies before Marina. None of them lasted more than 6 weeks. The triplets were a lot to handle. 3 babies at the same time is not a job for someone who is not ready to give everything. Marina was ready because she had nothing left to lose. Daniel worked through the morning without stopping. He cleared the weeds from the pathway, cut back the rose bushes that were growing wild into lawn, and started raking the dead leaves that had piled up against the back fence. The October air in Los Angeles was warm but not hot, and he worked steady and careful. Around 11 o'clock, he heard the back door open again. This time it was a different woman, taller, dressed in white linen pants and a silk blouse the color of cream. Her hair was perfectly straight, and her nails looked like they had just been done. She wore large sunglasses, even though she was standing in the shade of the back porch. She looked at Daniel the way people sometimes look at furniture. Her eyes moved over him and then moved away, like he was part of the yard and not a person standing in it. "You're the day worker," she said. It was not a question. "Yes, ma'am," Daniel said. "Daniel Reyes. Mrs. Torres sent me." The woman made a small sound that was not quite a response. She looked around the yard, walked down the steps slowly, and inspected one of the rose bushes with a finger and thumb. She pressed her lips together and looked at the fountain. "All of this should have been done last week," she said, mostly to herself. Then she looked back at Daniel. "Be finished by 4, and don't come inside for any reason." She walked back into the house. The door closed with a soft, expensive sound. Daniel picked up his rake and kept working. He had met women like that before. He simply made sure to do a job they could not complain about. Her name was Patricia Vega, 36 years old, and she had been with Roberto for 8 months. She had met him at a charity dinner in Beverly Hills and decided within the first hour that he was exactly the kind of man she had been waiting for. Successful, widowed, with young children who still needed a mother figure. What Patricia felt for Roberto was real in her own way, but it was tangled up with other things that were less clean. The fear of getting older and not having children. A diagnosis she had received 14 months ago that told her natural pregnancy was unlikely. The desperate need to belong somewhere that felt permanent and important. She was not a cruel woman by nature, but she was a woman who had started to believe that the ends justified the means. And right now, the biggest obstacle between her and the life she wanted was Marina. Marina, who the children called Mama, without being taught to. Marina, who knew every sound each baby made before they could form words. Marina, who had built something with Roberto and those 3 children that no amount of expensive gifts or perfectly ironed outfits could touch. Patricia had smiled at Marina 100 times. She had brought toys the children never played with. She had offered to help with routines she did not understand. And every single time, she had felt the quiet, invisible wall between her and that family. She had been patient. She had tried the right way, and it had not worked. So she had started to think about other ways. Addictive Stories brings you this next part of the story with a warning. What Patricia was about to do was not the action of a villain in a movie. It was the action of a desperate woman who had convinced herself that what she was doing was temporary, that once she proved herself, everyone would understand. That love, even when forced, would eventually grow into something real. Roberto had told Marina the night before that he needed to travel to Sacramento for 3 days, a closing on a building deal that could not be moved. He had asked Marina 3 times if she was sure she could manage alone. She had told him yes every time. What neither of them knew was that Patricia had overheard that conversation. She had been in the hallway outside the kitchen, still in her coat from arriving, when she heard the words 3 days. And something had clicked in her mind like a key turning in a lock. 3 days, 72 hours. Enough time to show the children that she could care for them. Enough time to show Roberto, when he came home, that Marina was not the only one capable of holding that family together. She had started her plan that same night. She had taken the spare key from the drawer in Roberto's office while he was putting the children to bed. An old key with a metal tag that said master on it. She had held it in her hand for a long time before putting it in her purse. She told herself it was just a help. She almost believed it. Roberto left early Tuesday morning. He kissed each of the triplets on the forehead while they were still in their pajamas eating breakfast. Mateo had oatmeal on his ear. Diego was trying to put a spoon in the cup instead of his mouth. Sophia was banging her small fist on the tray of her high chair and singing something that sounded like a single repeated note. Roberto stood at the door for a long moment, watching Marina wipe Diego's face, hand Sophia a cracker, and reach over to fix the spoon in Mateo's hand all at the same time. He said, "Call me anytime, for anything." Marina said, "Go, we're fine." He left. In the backyard, Daniel Reyes had arrived again. Mrs. Torres had asked if he could come back the second day to finish the vegetable garden and repaint the fence along the east side. He had said yes without hesitation. 2 days of work was better than one. He set up his supplies near the fence and started mixing the paint. Through the open kitchen window above him, he could hear the soft sounds of the morning. Children laughing, a woman humming, dishes clinking together. The ordinary sound of a house that was alive and running. He did not know those sounds were about to stop. Around 2 in the afternoon, a car pulled into the driveway on the other side of the house. Daniel did not see it, but he heard the engine. He heard heels on the front path. He heard the doorbell ring once. Then he heard the front door open. Then silence. Patricia had come with a plan and a smile. She brought a bag of groceries and another bag of toys, and she rang the bell like she belonged there. Marina opened the door and felt something cold move through her chest, though she could not explain why. "Roberto asked me to check in," Patricia said. "I hope that's okay." It was not okay, but Marina had no grounds to say so. Roberto had never told her that Patricia could not visit. She stepped aside and let her in. The triplets were in the living room playing with blocks. They looked at Patricia the way they always did, with brief curiosity and then a turn back to what they were doing. They had never reached for her, never asked for her by name, never showed the kind of recognition that small children show for people they trust. Patricia set her bags down and knelt on the carpet with them. She tried to join the game with the blocks. Mateo moved his blocks away. Diego looked at the bag of toys and then looked at Marina. Sophia put her head down on the carpet and started humming to herself. Patricia sat back on her heels and pressed her lips together. "They'll warm up," Marina said carefully, because she did not want to be unkind. Patricia turned and looked at her with a smile that did not match her eyes. "Of course they will," she said. "They just need time." Marina made lunch. Patricia stayed in the living room. The afternoon moved slowly and strange, like air before a storm that has not broken yet. Outside, Daniel finished painting the first section of the fence and stepped back to check the line. Clean, even. He was careful about his work. Always had been. His own father had taught him that the quality of your work is the only thing people cannot take from you. He drank from the orange cooler that Marina had pointed out the day before. The water was still cold. He looked at the back of the house and noticed that the kitchen window was now closed, even though it had been open all morning. Something about that small change made him pause. He was not a man who looked for trouble, but years of working in other people's spaces had given him a kind of quiet radar for when things shifted. He went back to the fence. About an hour later, he heard something from inside the house. Not loud, not a shout, more like movement. Footsteps going quickly from one room to another. A door closing, then another. He told himself it was nothing. Families with small children were always moving fast, always closing doors, always running from one need to the next. He knew that from his own years raising Camila. He kept painting. But 20 minutes later, he heard something that made him stop completely. It was faint through the walls and the closed window, but it was unmistakable. A woman's voice, saying something urgent and low, and then a door, not the sound of it opening, the sound of a lock turning. Daniel put down his brush. Inside the house, Patricia had done what she had told herself she would only do if everything else failed. She had waited until Marina put the triplets down for their afternoon nap. She had waited until Marina went to her room to rest. and then she had moved quickly and quietly through the hallway. Marina's room had one of the old doors Roberto had never replaced. Heavy wood with an original lock that used a key on both sides. The kind of lock that most people forgot even existed in modern homes. Patricia had the master key in her hand. She told herself it was temporary, just a few hours. Just enough time to show the children, when they woke up, that she was there and capable and present. Just enough time to build something real. She turned the key. The lock clicked. She went down the hall to the kitchen, picked up Marina's phone from where it was charging on the counter, and slipped it into her own purse. Then she sat down in the armchair in the living room and waited. 40 minutes later, the triplets woke up, and the first thing all three of them did was walk to Marina's door. Mateo reached up and grabbed the handle. It did not open. He tried again. Diego came and helped him. The handle turned, but the door held. Sophia stood behind her brothers and looked at the door with her head tilted. Then Mateo started to cry. Daniel was still outside. He heard it even through the walls. That kind of crying does not need volume to carry. It carries because it is real. The crying grew. 3 small voices climbing over each other in a way that triplet crying does, like one fire feeding 3 flames at the same time. Daniel had stopped painting entirely. He was standing near the back door, his head turned toward the house, his hands still at his sides. He told himself it was not his business. He told himself children cry. He told himself that the woman inside, whoever she was handling it. But the crying did not stop. It got louder, and underneath it, he could hear something else. A voice, steady and low and coming from behind the door, saying words he could not make out, but in a tone he recognized. The tone of someone trying not to panic while panicking. Daniel walked to the back door and knocked. Firm, 3 times. No one answered. He knocked again and called out, "Hello? Everything okay in there?" Silence from the adults. Continued crying from the children. He tried the door. It was unlocked. He opened it slowly and stepped into the kitchen. The house felt wrong immediately. The air had a tension in it that hit him in the chest. The triplets were in the hallway. All 3 of them were standing in front of a closed door, banging on it with their small hands, crying the way children cry when they cannot reach the one person they need. And from the other side of that door came Marina's voice. "I'm here. I'm here. Mama's here. Open the door, please." Someone opened the door. Daniel stood in the kitchen doorway and understood exactly what had happened. He moved fast. He went to the hallway and crouched down to the children's level first. He did not want to frighten them. He was a stranger to them, and he knew it. "Hey," he said softly. "Hey, little ones. It's okay. I'm going to help." Sophia looked at him with big wet eyes. Mateo kept hitting the door. Diego turned around and held his arms up to Daniel in the way small children reach for any adult when they are scared enough. Daniel held him without thinking. The baby gripped his shirt and buried his face in his shoulder. Daniel knocked on the door. "Ma'am, are you okay in there?" "The door is locked." Marina's voice came back, strained but controlled. "I can't get out. Do you have a key? Can you open it?" "I'm going to try," he said. He looked at the lock. Old brass, a 2-sided key lock. He checked the keyhole, and there was nothing in it, which meant the key was somewhere else. He scanned the hallway. Nothing on the door frame, nothing on the table nearby. Where would the key be? He called through the door. "I don't know," Marina said. "Roberto has a spare somewhere. Try his office. Second door on the left, top drawer of the desk." Daniel carried Diego on one hip and went to the office. He found the desk. He pulled the top drawer. Inside was a small wooden box. He opened it. 3 keys on a ring. He grabbed them and went back. Second key fit. The lock turned. The door opened. Marina came out of that room like someone who had been holding their breath underwater. She went straight for the children. Mateo and Sophia threw themselves at her legs. Diego, still in Daniel's arms, reached for her immediately, and she took him. She held all 3 as close as she could manage and crouched down on the hallway floor, her eyes closed, her breathing hard and uneven. Daniel stood back and gave her space. He was good at knowing when to step back. After a minute, Marina looked up at him. Her eyes were red. Her voice was quiet. "Thank you," she said. "Who are you?" "Daniel Reyes," he said. "I'm doing yard work. I was outside. I heard the crying." She nodded slowly. She looked at the children, then back at the door, then at him. "Where is she?" Marina asked. "I don't know," Daniel said. "The house was quiet when I came in. I didn't see anyone else." Marina stood up carefully, still holding Sophia against her chest. She walked through the house quickly, checking rooms. The living room was empty. The kitchen was empty. The front door was closed but unlocked. She checked the driveway through the window. Patricia's car was gone. Marina stood at the window for a long moment. Then she took out her phone to call Roberto. Her phone was not in her pocket. She went back to the kitchen counter where she always left it charging. It was not there either. She looked at Daniel. "Can I use your phone?" He handed it to her without a word. Roberto picked up on the second ring. He could hear it in her voice before she finished the first sentence. He was already moving toward the door of the conference room when she got to the part about the lock. By the time she said Patricia's name, he had his jacket in his hand and was walking to the elevator. He told her he was coming. He told her to stay calm. He told her to check the children. Marina went through each of the triplets carefully. Mateo had a small red mark on his palm from hitting the door. Diego had stopped crying but was very still and quiet. Sophia was clingy and kept her arms around Marina's neck and would not let go. No serious injuries. But the fear in their eyes was something that broke Marina in a quiet way she would not be able to explain for weeks. Daniel stayed. She did not ask him to. He simply did not leave. He made himself useful in the way that people do when they sense that leaving would be the wrong thing. He filled 3 small cups of water. He found some crackers in the cabinet that the children clearly recognized and accepted. He sat on the kitchen floor and let Mateo climb on his legs because the boy needed something solid to hold on to. Marina watched this large, quiet stranger comfort her children without making a single thing about himself, and she felt something she could not name. It was not romantic. It was something older than that. The relief of not being alone in a crisis. "You have kids?" she asked. "One daughter," he said. "She's 16. He left it at that. Roberto arrived 3 hours and 20 minutes after the phone call. He came through the front door with his tie loose and his face carrying an expression that Daniel had seen on men before. The expression of someone who had imagined the worst for 3 hours straight and was now checking each room against that imagined worst to see how close it had come. He went to the children first. He held each one. He checked each one. He spoke their names in a low voice and waited until he could feel them relax against him before he moved on to the next. Then he looked at Marina. He took in her red eyes, the way she was holding herself carefully like something inside her had been cracked and she was protecting it. The phone in her hand that was not her own phone. "Tell me everything," he said. She told him. All of it. The visit, the afternoon, the locked door, the missing phone. Daniel, standing near the kitchen, told his part. The crying he heard from outside. The door. The key. He said it plainly and without decoration. Roberto listened to all of it without speaking. When it was finished, he looked at Daniel for a long moment. "You came in from the yard," Roberto said. "Yes, sir." "You found the key." "Yes, sir." "You stayed." Daniel nodded. Roberto put his hand out. Daniel shook it. It was a firm shake that lasted a second longer than a normal handshake. The kind that means something. "I'm grateful," Roberto said. The security system in the house had recorded everything. Roberto sat in his office with his laptop and watched the footage in silence. Daniel stood in the doorway because Roberto had asked him to stay. Marina sat on the couch in the living room with the 3 children asleep against her, one on each side and Sophia across her lap. The footage was clear. Patricia arriving with her bags. Patricia waiting in the living room while the children napped. Patricia walking to the hallway. Patricia standing at Marina's door with a key in her hand. The turn of the lock. Her walking to the kitchen and picking up Marina's phone. Her sitting down in the armchair, calm, like she had done something reasonable. Then the children waking up, going to the door. Mateo reaching for the handle. The crying starting. Patricia trying and failing to calm them. Her voice getting higher and more desperate as the minutes passed. 3 small children standing in the hallway, refusing to be comforted by someone who was not their Marina. And then, on one camera, the front door opening, Patricia walking out, the door closing, her car backing out of the driveway. She had left them. She had locked Marina in, taken her phone. And then when the plan fell apart, she had simply walked out and left 3 children who were not even 2 years old alone in a house. Roberto closed the laptop. He sat in the silence for a moment. Then he picked up his phone and called his attorney. Daniel was still there when Patricia came back. It was after 8 in the evening. He had not been able to make himself leave. He had helped Marina give the triplets a bath and dinner, and he had sat on the floor of the living room while Roberto read them a story, because 3 exhausted and emotionally shaken babies needed the room to feel full and safe. He heard the car in the driveway. He watched Roberto stand up from the armchair. Patricia came in looking like someone who had rehearsed a story the whole drive home. Her voice was controlled, and her explanation started before she had fully closed the door. "I can explain everything," she said. "It wasn't what it looked like. Marina misunderstood the situation. I only wanted to help, and things got out of hand. If anything, the problem was that there was an unfamiliar man in the backyard. I got scared, and I needed to secure the children. The yard worker was a threat, not me." She looked at Daniel when she said it. Daniel did not move. He did not speak. He felt the shift in the air, the way blame was being lifted from one person and dropped on another, and he recognized it with a tired recognition of someone who had been in that position before. Marina looked at him. Her face had gone pale. Roberto's face did not change. He simply said, "I've seen the security footage, Patricia." The silence that followed was the loudest thing in the room. Patricia's expression did not collapse all at once. It slipped in stages, like ice breaking apart in slow motion. The prepared story fell away piece by piece. First the confidence, then the certainty, then finally even the posture. Her shoulders came down. Her chin dropped slightly. She tried one more time. "The footage doesn't show everything," she said. "You don't understand what it was like in that house alone with 3 children who won't respond to me. Marina has turned them against me. She has made herself irreplaceable on purpose. She is manipulating the situation and manipulating you." Roberto looked at her steadily. "The footage shows you locking the door," he said. "It shows you taking her phone. It shows you leaving 3 children alone after one of them fell." Marina looked up sharply. "Someone fell?" "Diego," Roberto said quietly. "In the kitchen, when Patricia was trying to manage all 3 and things were out of control. He's fine, but it's on the footage." Marina closed her eyes for 3 seconds. Daniel watched Patricia look around the room, at the children on the couch, at Marina, at Roberto, at him. He watched her search for something she could still hold on to. Then she looked at Daniel directly. "He came inside without permission," she said. "An unknown man in the house with small children. You should be asking him why he came in uninvited." Every head in the room turned to Daniel. He met her eyes calmly and said, "I came in because 3 babies were crying at a locked door and the woman on the other side couldn't get out." The room was silent. Marina's silence after Patricia's accusation lasted only a moment, but in that moment Daniel saw something cross her face that he understood completely. The fear that being poor and unknown made your version of events less believable. The fear that no matter what was true, the person without money and connections would still be the one who had to prove themselves. He had lived that fear for 20 years. But then Marina stood up. She stood up from the couch where she had been sitting with the children, and she walked to the center of the room, and she looked at Patricia with clear, steady eyes. "Daniel Reyes came into this house because he heard children in distress," she said. "He found the key. He opened the door. He held Diego and gave the children water and stayed when he had every reason to leave. He did not take anything. He did not threaten anyone. He did not ask for anything." She paused. "You locked me in a room, took my phone, and left 3 babies alone when you panicked. And then you came back and tried to blame the one person who actually helped." Patricia said nothing. Roberto said, "My attorney has copies of all the footage. If you have anything else to say, you can say it to him." Patricia picked up her bag from the floor. She looked at the triplets one more time. Mateo was watching her with solemn eyes. Sophia had her face turned into the couch cushion. Diego was asleep. She walked out. The door closed behind her for the last time. The room breathed out. After Patricia left, Roberto asked Daniel to sit down. Marina made coffee, the kind of coffee that people make when they need to do something with their hands. The triplets were fully asleep on the couch, the way small children sleep after an emotional day, completely and heavily, like they had simply used up everything they had. Roberto looked at Daniel across the kitchen table. He asked him to tell his story from the beginning, not the events of today. His story. Daniel looked at him for a moment and then told it. The simple version, not the version with all the feelings attached. 42 years old, widowed, one daughter, day labor, yard work, painting whatever came. Roberto listened without interrupting. When Daniel finished, Roberto was quiet for a moment. You came into a stranger's house today, Roberto said. You could have kept painting the fence and walked away and told yourself it was not your problem. Daniel looked at his hands around the coffee cup. I heard children crying, he said, and I heard a woman's voice that sounded like someone who couldn't get to them. I've been the person who couldn't get to someone. He paused. I didn't have a choice. Marina was looking at him from across the table. She understood exactly what he meant by that. She did not ask him to explain it. Roberto nodded slowly. I want to talk to you about something, he said. Not tonight. Tonight is too heavy. But I want to talk to you before you go tomorrow. Daniel said he would be there. The next morning, Daniel arrived at 7:30. The house was quiet in the past 2 days, the kind of quiet that comes after something hard has passed through. He let himself into the back gate like he had been doing and started cleaning up his tools and supplies from the fence project. Marina came out at 8 with 2 cups of coffee. She handed him one and sat on the back step. She did not say good morning, and he did not either. They just sat in the early light and drank their coffee. After a while, she said, You have a daughter. Camila, he said. She wants to study nursing. Does she know how to study for it? She's smart, he said. Smarter than me. She'll figure it out. Marina nodded. You're raising her alone. Since she was 10, he said. Another silence. Not uncomfortable. Just a silence of 2 people who understood something similar about loss and about continuing anyway. Yesterday, Marina said slowly, when Patricia said what she said about you, I was afraid for a second. Afraid that it would work. That no one would listen to you. Daniel looked at his cup. That happens, he said. It shouldn't, Marina said. He did not answer because there was no answer that was not exhausting. She looked at him. Thank you, she said again. I know I already said it, but I want to say it when I'm not shaking. He looked at her. How are the children? Mateo asked for you this morning, she said. Called you senor. For the first time in the conversation, Daniel smiled. Roberto came outside around 9:30 with a folder in his hand and a look on his face that was thoughtful rather than urgent. He pulled one of the patio chairs to face Daniel and sat down. He opened the folder and looked at it for a moment before speaking. I own 4 residential buildings in Los Angeles, he said. 1 in Boyle Heights, 1 in Silver Lake, 1 in Montebello, and 1 downtown. Between them, there are 72 units. Daniel listened without expression. I've been using a property management company for the last 4 years, Roberto continued. They handle maintenance, repairs, tenant concerns. But the truth is they're not doing a good job. Things get done late. Work is sloppy. Tenants are unhappy. I've been meaning to change the arrangement for a long time. He set the folder down and looked at Daniel directly. I need someone who knows how to work, who shows up when they say they will, who handles problems without drama, someone who knows the difference between a real repair and a temporary fix. He paused. Yesterday, I watched you handle a crisis calmly, find a solution, protect 3 children who were not yours, and still have the dignity to stand there quietly when someone tried to blame you for it. That tells me a lot about who you are. Daniel was very still. I'm offering you the maintenance and operations manager position for all 4 buildings, Roberto said. Full-time, full benefits, and a salary that is considerably more than you are making now. The morning light sat between them. Daniel said, Why would you do that? Roberto said, Because I recognize someone who deserves a different situation. Daniel went home that evening to his apartment on Cesar Chavez Avenue and sat at the kitchen table for a long time. The apartment was small. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a kitchen with a window that faced the wall of the next building. Camila had decorated it with things she bought from the dollar store. A small cactus on the windowsill, a drawing she had made when she was 12, framed in a plastic frame. Hanging near the door, he made dinner, rice and beans, the way he always made it, with enough for 2 days. When Camila came home from her afternoon shift at the pharmacy where she worked part-time, she found him sitting at the table eating in silence. She sat across from him. She could read him the way children who grow up close to one parent learn to read them. "What happened?" she asked. He told her. All of it. The house, the crying, the locked door, the key, Patricia's accusation, Roberto's offer. Camila sat very still while he talked. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. "What did you say to him?" she asked. "I said I needed to think about it." Camila looked at him for a long time. Then she said, "Papa, say yes." He looked at her. "You have been working every day for 20 years, and we have never had 1 year where we didn't worry about rent. You deserve something different. Say yes." He thought about the conversation on the patio, about Roberto's eyes when he spoke, about Marina's voice through a locked door, refusing to give up. "I'll call him tomorrow," he said. Camila nodded. "Call him tonight," she said. He called that night. Roberto picked up before the second ring, like he had been waiting. Daniel said yes. Roberto told him to come to the office on Friday. He said he would have the paperwork ready and a schedule of all 4 buildings. He said they would do a walkthrough of each property the following week so Daniel could see exactly what needed attention. He also said, "I want you to bring Camila to the building in Montebello. There are 2 units there that I keep available for employees. Rent-free, part of the compensation package. One of them would be yours. 2 bedrooms, proper kitchen, parking included." Daniel held the phone and did not say anything for 3 full seconds. Then he said, "That's too much." Roberto said, "It's part of the job. I need my operations manager to live near the properties. It makes sense logistically." Daniel knew when someone was being generous in a way that let you keep your dignity. He recognized the structure of the offer. It was not charity. It was a real position with real responsibilities. And the housing was framed as practical, which made it possible to accept. "Okay," Daniel said. After he hung up, he sat at the table again. Camila was watching him from the doorway. He said, "We're moving to Montebello." Camila put both hands over her mouth. Then she came and hugged him and did not let go for a long time. He held his daughter in that small kitchen with its dollar store cactus and its plastic frame drawing, and he felt something shift, something that had been tight in his chest for a very long time. The weeks that followed brought change in layers, the kind that arise gradually and then all at once. Daniel started on Monday at the 4 buildings. The previous management company had left behind a backlog of unfixed problems, leaking faucets, faulty electrical panels, a broken elevator in the downtown building that had been out of service for 3 weeks. Daniel made a list in a notebook and started at the top. He was thorough. He was honest with tenants about timelines. When something took longer than expected, he said so, and he explained why. When a repair was beyond his skill, he found the right person for it and supervised the work closely. Within the first 3 weeks, Roberto received 3 calls from tenants saying things had changed. Daniel and Camila moved into the Montebello apartment on a Thursday. Camila walked through every room twice before she said anything. Then she stood in the kitchen, which had a window that faced a courtyard with a tree in it, and said, "I'm going to apply to the nursing program." "I know," Daniel said. "For real this time. Not maybe someday. For real." He smiled. "I know." She enrolled that same month. Daniel paid the application fees without flinching, which was the first time in her life she had seen him not flinch at a fee. At the house on Maple Creek Drive, things were also changing. The triplets were growing. Marina was healing. Roberto was learning how to be present in a different way. And in the space that Patricia had left behind, something quieter and more honest was beginning to grow. Marina had started seeing a therapist. Her name was Dr. Linda Ochoa, and she had an office in Pasadena with plants on every surface, and a way of listening that felt like being handed a warm blanket. Marina had resisted going for the first 2 weeks. She had told Roberto she was fine. He had told her that fine was not the same as well. In the sessions, she talked about things she had kept folded inside her for a long time. The baby she had lost, the partner who left, the year of feeling like she was standing at the edge of something with no floor underneath, and then the strange, unexpected experience of finding 3 children who needed her exactly as much as she needed them. She talked about the night of the locked door, about the specific terror of hearing her children in distress and not being able to reach them, about the way she had talked to the door for hours, guiding them, singing, refusing to stop. Dr. Ochoa asked her once what she had been thinking during those hours. Marina thought about it for a moment and then said, "I wasn't thinking. I was just doing. There was no choice. So I didn't have to decide anything. I just had to keep talking until someone came." Dr. Ochoa said, "That is exactly what love does in a crisis. It removes all the options except the one that moves toward the person." Marina carried that sentence with her for a very long time. Roberto's attorney filed the paperwork against Patricia. The charges included unlawful imprisonment, endangerment of a minor, and theft of personal property. The security footage was submitted as evidence. Patricia's attorney called and offered settlement. Roberto declined. He wanted the record to be clear. The case moved slowly through the system the way these things do. But the footage was undeniable, and in the end, Patricia accepted a plea that included community service, a fine, and a restraining order that kept her from coming within 500 feet of the house, the children, or Marina. Roberto never spoke about her bitterly in front of the children. He had read enough about child development to know that how parents speak about absent people shapes how children understand the world. When Sophia asked once where the tall lady had gone, Roberto said simply that she had made some bad choices and was learning from them. Sophia accepted this with the simple practicality of a very small child and went back to her crackers. Daniel had become a quiet presence in the extended orbit of that family. He came to the house sometimes for practical reasons. A repair Roberto needed a second opinion on, a question about the building in Silver Lake. He and Roberto had developed the easy, honest relationship of 2 men who respected each other's directness. On one of those visits, Daniel sat at the kitchen table with Mateo on his lap. The boy had decided, without any ceremony, that Daniel was someone worth sitting near. He always climbed up without asking. Daniel let him. He was good at that, at letting people choose. Addictive stories want you to stay with this story now, because this is a part where the small things start to add up into something larger. On a Saturday afternoon 3 months after everything happened, Roberto invited Daniel and Camila to the house for dinner. It was a simple meal: rice, black beans, roast chicken, and a flan that Marina had made because Camila had mentioned once that it was her favorite dessert. The triplets were at the table in their high chairs. Mateo and Diego competed to see who could make the most noise hitting the table with their spoons. Sophia ate with extraordinary focus and dignity, as she always did. Camila sat next to Marina, and the 2 of them talked like they had known each other for years. Camila told Marina about the nursing program, about the professors she liked and the ones she found difficult. Marina told Camila about the babies when they were first born, how she had learned to tell them apart in the dark by the way each one breathed. Roberto and Daniel sat at the other end of the table and talked about the buildings, about a repair estimate that had come in higher than expected, about a tenant in Boyle Heights who had asked if his elderly mother could move in. At some point, the conversation at the table stopped being 2 separate conversations and became one. The children were pulling at everyone's sleeves. Someone knocked over a cup of water. Laughter happened. Daniel looked around that table at the end of the evening and felt something he had not felt in a long time. He felt that he was somewhere he belonged. 6 months after the Friday when Roberto had made his offer in the backyard, he called Daniel into his private office, not the building management office. His personal office at home, the one with the dark bookshelves and the photograph of the triplets at 6 months old, sleeping in a row like 3 small animals. Daniel sat across the desk and waited. Roberto said, "I'm setting up a property trust for the 4 buildings. As part of that reorganization, I want to create a formal equity stake for you, a 5% ownership interest in the operations entity, vested over 3 years. Daniel looked at him. "I don't know what that means in full," he said. Roberto explained it, slowly and clearly. What it meant was that Daniel would, over 3 years, become a partial owner of the company that managed the properties. It meant profit sharing. It meant that his work was building something that would partially belong to him. Daniel was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "You don't have to do this." Roberto said, "I know I don't have to. That's why I'm doing it." He slid the document across the desk. Daniel looked at it for a moment and then looked up. "My daughter is going to be a nurse," he said. It was not a response to the document. It was a statement about what the last 6 months had meant. Roberto understood. "Then she's going to need to take care of herself first," Roberto said. "That's what you've been doing for her. And now you can do it with a little more ground under your feet." Daniel signed the document. There's a moment in some stories where everything that has been difficult becomes visible as the exact path that was necessary. This is one of those moments. Daniel Reyes had worked for 20 years with his hands in his back and his willingness to show up every day without asking for recognition. He had raised a daughter alone in a small apartment with enough money to survive and not always enough to breathe. He had never done anything dishonest to get more. He had also never done anything to draw attention to himself or to ask for what he deserved. But on a Monday morning in October, he had heard children crying through a wall, and he had walked through a door and made a decision that had nothing to do with reward. And that decision had changed everything. The triplets, now 2 years and 3 months old, called him Senor Daniel. Sophia had recently shortened it to simply Senor, which he said in a tone of deep personal authority that made everyone laugh. Mateo still climbed onto his lap without asking. Diego brought him his favorite book every visit and expected to be read to. Marina watched Daniel with these children and felt no jealousy, only gratitude, only the recognition that some people come into a family's life not to replace anything, but to add something that was missing. Camila came to dinner on Sundays. She was passing her nursing courses with strong marks. She had pinned a photograph of the triplets to her bulletin board at home, next to her class schedule. Nobody had planned any of this. Nobody had arranged it or designed it. It had come from a morning of yard work, a locked door, and one man who could not walk away from the sound of children crying. Years pass over families the way weather passes over a house. It changes things on the outside, and sometimes it changes things deep in the walls. But the house remains. The people in it remain. Sophia still had a small scar on her forehead from a night Patricia was there. She had stopped asking where it came from, because by the time she was old enough to really ask, Marina had already told her the story in the way you tell children the truth, simply, with love underneath every word. She told her about the woman who made a bad choice because she was afraid of not being enough. She told her about Senor Daniel, who came through the back door because he heard crying and could not walk away. She told her about how sometimes the hardest nights are the ones that show you who your people are. Sophia listened with serious eyes. Then she touched her own forehead and said, "So this is from the hard night." Marina said yes. "And Senor Daniel came," Sophia said. "Yes," Marina said, "because he heard us. Because he heard you." Sophia thought about this for a moment. Then she said, "We should have a cake for him." Marina laughed.